Welcome to the Board of Governors Federal Reserve System Vendor Fair. My name is Christine Fields, and I'm the Chief Acquisition Officer at the board. And we have an exciting panelists here to help you navigate the procurement process in the Federal Reserve System. We have with us Beverly Millenbach, who is a Strategic Sourcing Specialist in the National Procurement Office. We have Mark Hands, the Supplier Diversity Program Manager from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. And we have Melissa Butler, who's the Assistant Vice President in the National IT Contracts and Procurement, that's a mouthful, at the Richmond Fed. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they do at their bank, and the kinds of products and services that they procure. Then I'll open it up for a few questions, and then we'll just do questions for them to answer, and then give you all an opportunity to ask any follow-up questions, okay? So, Beverly, you want to start?
So I am a sourcing specialist in the National Procurement Office, or the NPO, as you'll hear it referred to. And the NPO is physically located in the Richmond Reserve Bank, but we actually serve all 12 of the banks across the country. And our sourcing team is responsible for projects where we're looking to leverage spend across the banks when they're buying similar goods and services. And you know, sometimes it's 3 or 4 banks, sometimes it's all 12, but generally when banks are buying the same thing is when you'll often see us get involved. We also strive to obtain consistent contract terms and conditions across the banks to the extent that we can. And we also are here to help reduce the resource burden. Instead of having each bank conduct an individual procurement for the same type of purchase, we want to help them do it once. A little easier on you all, and certainly a little easier on us as we're going through the procurement process. So we do find that we buy a range of goods. The things that come immediately to my mind are travel services, office products, housekeeping, things that are very similar across the banks. And then we also tend to get involved with a fair amount of consulting work when we're bringing in expertise, whether it's in HR or project management, those types of, statement of work type consulting engagements.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Hands, and I'm the Supplier Diversity Program Manager for the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago. One of the things I think that I always like to start off with is a lot of people don't really know what the Federal Reserve does. And so we're the Federal Reserve, the federal name really is something that is deceiving. We're not a federal agency, and so we don't use the federal guidelines, the federal acquisition regulations. We're this quasi-government entity, public entity, private entity. So the Board of Governors, they are government employees, but the banks, there's 12 banks across the country, and we all operate independently. We have independent procurement operations, and our primary function is that we set monetary policy, so that's raising and lowering interest rates. We supervise and regulate the banks, and we make sure that the payment system is safe and sound. So what do we buy? So we really buy anything that any large commercial bank would purchase. A great deal of our purchases are maintaining our facilities in each of our locations. And our big operations are cash operations. We maintain a lot of facilities. We have our own law enforcement unit. We buy things anywhere from ammunition to weapons to professional services, cybersecurity types of services. So you name it, we're across the gamut. But we buy a little bit of everything. But one of the things, just want you to know, we're not a federal agency that purchases billions of dollars worth of goods and services. We're Chicago entity. We're mostly between $50 and $60 million annually.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Butler. I am in charge of a national IT contracts and procurement office. I'm co-located with Beverly in Richmond, Virginia. But of course, my organization has a little bit different mission. It is for the Federal Reserve banking system in whole, and it's the IT infrastructure that supports the Federal Reserve system. System is inclusive of all Federal Reserve, 12 Federal Reserve banks and the Board of Governors. So primarily my team is responsible for IT infrastructure. We also, primarily our spend, our high spend is on software, consulting services, and we also do have computer equipment that is in our data centers, as well as a network infrastructure that supports the backbone and the communication of the Federal Reserve System. You will hear Beverly and I talk at a national level. It just will be a little bit of confusion. It could be at times because you won't know who to go to. But we'll try to keep you straight because we talk at a national level. I do things primarily that will support the IT organization, but I tend to do contracts at a national level. Beverly tends to do contracts for all 12 Federal Reserve banks.
Okay, thank you. And as Mark mentioned, even though we have federal in our name, we are not a federal agency. But I also want to tell you a little bit of the differences between the board and the reserve banks. The board, like the banks, are independent. We are an independent federal agency. We do not get appropriated funds. We do not follow the FAR, although we follow the spirit of the FAR. And it's a lot easier to do business with us than it is when you're trying to navigate for government contracts. So you'll find that to be very interesting if you sit in on the next session. We typically do not advertise for our procurement opportunities. So it's important that you all register with the Federal Reserve Board and with the banks. We have our own vendor registration system from which we pull vendors and invite them to participate. Although more recently we are exploring using federal biz ops. We're doing it as a marketing strategy and also for some of our simplified acquisitions. So for those of you that are familiar with the federal government and Fed biz ops, you'll see some of our procurements out there as well. So, and here at the board, we purchase for the board, Washington, D.C. only. From time to time, we do partner with the reserve banks on some of the procurements. So you'll need to, as I said, make sure you register with the board and with the reserve banks. Questions so far? Yes. So at the Reserve Board, we hire consultants to do executive coaching for our officers and senior level managers who need a little help in terms of their management style, or if they've been a technical expert and now suddenly they're in a position where they are managing people. We want to make sure that they have good management skills. Training and development opportunities. We have a basic ordering agreement where we have about 8 companies that provide training opportunities and consulting services around a variety of things. And I'll let...
I would echo that as well.
Okay.
Those are similar services to what the banks tend to engage. Mark, you're nodding as well?
Yeah, and I also include things like diversity inclusion consulting is significant in many of the banks. Professional services. We do have a little consulting around some of our IT projects, internal projects that occur within individual banks. But mainly I would say it's like executive coaching, training, and things like that.
And from an IT perspective, we're going to be looking for more emerging technologies, things that are around the cloud, things that are around collaboration, big data, mobility, information security, and software as a service.
Did I answer your question? Okay, yes, in the back.
Good morning. My name is Bill Bristow, and I'm with Best Tech. I was here last year, and we registered, and we were looking for opportunities to work with Federal Reserve. And we were told that in order to be invited to bid on opportunities, you had to register.
Yes.
And once you registered, things would sort of fall out from there. Well, it's been a year since I registered, and I haven't been invited to bid on anything. And the question I have is there anything that we can do beyond registration to put ourselves in a position to compete for some of the opportunities that are there at the Federal Reserve Board?
Okay, so this vendor fair is an opportunity, as Marletha said and as Janet Yellen said, for you all to interact directly with our program managers, with our procurement staff, both in the grand ballroom at the tables, but also during the matchmaking session. Those tables are staffed with the program managers who will be having upcoming procurement opportunities. I think sometimes vendors like yourselves get frustrated because we have an event and we're already 2 or 3 years into a 5-year contract. So I would say be patient, stay in touch with the folks at the board. You have their names, their addresses, and Marletha Williams, who's trying to run out the door. She is our supplier diversity specialist, and she is always available to meet with any vendor. She often has them come in. She'll introduce them to our procurement staff. She'll introduce them to program managers around the board. So stay in touch, be persistent, stalker, children. Yes.
Follow on to Julie's question. Are you finding when you hold these affairs that you see the same companies time after time getting your contracts? When you procure IT, you know, such and such pretty much is always there, they get the contracts. Being on the vendor list year after year, I see the same faces when I go out to these actions and get some of the same language. And I know you say stay on their hip, do those types of things, but that's not enough. Janet Yellen said in her remarks, even coming out today for a small business costs money. I'm thinking about parking all day, taking the subway down. I mean, this is just reality. So, if you will, can you tell us how to really get a contract? How do we get a park?
Okay, great. That's a wonderful lead into. Great lead into the next question. So I'd like each of the panelists to talk about the procurement process.
So in the spirit of the FAR is a great
Yes.
phrase, because it does mean, particularly for the NPO, we do rely on formal RFI and RFP processes. And so a little bit in answer to your question, yes, the registration is important. And then for us, I would say that we also collaborate without question on every project with our supplier diversity manager. So, Mark has colleagues around the system, and we work with them to say, who have you met at a conference that maybe I wasn't able to attend? Who have you talked to that might be a good match for this opportunity? And that is one way that we really look through our database, in addition to normal market research type stuff, to try to identify suppliers that we may just not be familiar with you yet. And in that process, then again, since we don't publicize our opportunities, it would be an invitation only to participate in an RFI or RFP and go through that process of aligning your capabilities with the business requirements that are listed in the RFP.
I'll just add on if I can if you don't mind. Sorry, Mark.
No problem.
Because it's the same subject matter that Beverly's talking about. We do have a very formal process. If we say it in any regard, it is a competitive bid process. All 12 Federal Reserve banks follow the same guidelines. We call them model acquisition guidelines. And it is in the spirit of the FAR. So in my shop, it's very similar to what Beverly said, RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. RFQs are small transactions that typically are under 100,000. But from a formal perspective and from a complication perspective, and to make things even harder to do, we do a lot of RFPs. We probably don't do as many RFPs on a day-to-day or annual basis, but we do a lot, and they're big, and they're large, and they're cumbersome, and they take a lot of time. So you might only hear about one opportunity every 4 years, and that is pretty much, you know, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's important to not only register, you stay in touch with us, meet us at these fairs, and I can tell you we've been doing this for 5 years now. We've been a lot more out-facing, and of course we're meeting some of the same people and seeing some of the same faces. I know that I saw a few already today, and we're keeping that momentum going, and we're keeping that visible in front of not only our procurement process but our supplier diversity program. Sorry, Mark.
No, yeah, one thing I just want to add to that, and I, you know, as a supplier diversity program manager within our process, I see every opportunity that comes through. Our goal at the Federal Reserve in Chicago is that in most of the banks, probably all of the banks, we want to make sure that we have diverse vendors included in all of our bids that we have. I think one of the things that your frustration is oftentimes what I hear when I'm talking to vendors is our contracts tend to be lengthy. We have 3-year contracts, and typically we have the opportunity to exercise 3 one-year options. So you're looking anywhere from 4 to 6 years potentially that a contract that could be in place. So I think that's part of your frustration when you're dealing with the Federal Reserve, is that they can be lengthy contracts. But one of the things that we do is that after those options are exercised, if we do all those options, we do put it out to bid, again, no matter who the vendor is. So we're not trying to ensure that we're always working with the same vendor, but we do, but I think that's part of the frustration. As far as how to get a contract with the Federal Reserve, one of the things that I offer to vendors when I meet them is make sure you stay in touch with me. And there I have my counterparts across the system, and we can ensure that we can get you their contact information, because they know when the bids are coming up in their districts. And what happens is every district is not on the exact same schedule. So I may need IT services in Chicago, Kansas City and Dallas. They may not need that for another year or 2. So it's important that you reach out to all my counterparts in the system, because opportunities can come at different times. And also, one of the things that hopefully before you leave here today, we'll give you a quiz on where all the Federal Reserve banks are in the country, and you can understand what their territories are. And so some do business nationally, and some really stick to their local or regional aspect. For example, the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, our district is central to lower Wisconsin, Iowa, central to upper Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. So, and there, other Federal Reserves have different territories. So kind of go on our website, kind of learn the different banks and their territories, and you can see kind of where you may fit in terms of your business, your footprint, and things like that. But definitely reach out. Certainly you can reach out to me, and I can help you get my counterparts across the system, and you can start your relationship with them.
If I can just add something, Christine, sorry, I'll add. Richmond, the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond has 2 tables in the matchmaking session, and Beverly and I have colleagues there that will sit and meet with you and talk with you one-on-one through those sessions. So that's going on now and probably up until 3 o'clock this afternoon.
So let me ask the question back to you. You've heard what we do to try to stay in touch with all of you, make you feel welcome to be part of our acquisition process. What more would you like us to do? What can we do more of? What can we do differently? I'm going to ask you first, since you asked the question. And then
You have mandatory diversity initiatives that your procurements have to be for instance, to do local county government, state contracts, and some are for DBEs, or MBEs, if you all are familiar with all the acronyms. you know, you have to be certified in certain areas. Do you all have those types of things? That's what I
Yes.
would like to see, so that there's some teeth behind that, and therefore there'll be some, you know, measure, outcome, if you will.
So I think at the board, while we don't have written goals, we do have subcontractor goals, and we use the Small Business Administration guidelines for those goals. And as Janet Yellen said in her opening comments, we are ahead of the federal government in just our overall spend with diverse companies. In 2016, we did 38% of our business with small businesses. So far in 2017, 45% of all of our spend was with small businesses. So we are very committed to it. We're looking for ways to enhance putting teeth in our policy. I think one of the biggest frustrations that we have at the board is that trying to get program managers willing to look at and take a chance on companies that they've not done business with in the past. And so making them come to events like this will give them direct access to the people that they potentially could be hiring for business with the board. So the other thing that we do is Marletha will often do technical industry days. If we know we're having an upcoming procurement opportunity, it could be for construction or an IT contract, we will do an industry day, and we will identify companies to come in, meet with the program managers. They will talk about the project. They'll talk about what their needs are going to be, and they will have an opportunity, again, on a smaller scale than this, to talk to those folks that have the upcoming contracts. Okay.
There's also information on, and I know we do this in Richmond, and I'm not sure if you do this in Chicago or not, but we do post our report for how we are progressing for our supplier diversity, and we also, we call it an on-way office as well. We report it out to Congress. It's posted on our website. You also can go out there and review it and just see how we're progressing on it. I don't, Mark, if you do it in Chicago.
I think
but
all
yeah,
12 banks submit a report that goes to Congress annually. Usually it's submitted to Congress in March. Of every year. And you can go to everyone's website and you can pull that report down and you can see how we're doing relative to our reportable spend and diversity and inclusion and those things.
So let me ask the panel a question. Once a vendor registers with any one of the reserve banks, do you all share the lists, or do they have to register individually with the banks?
We do share the list. So when you register, it's in a common database that's visible then to the procurement staff in all 12 banks and in Melissa's organization as well.
Okay. Yes, correct. So you register with the board. We don't have access through our registration system to any of the opportunities at the reserve banks. Although you will often see us out at events. We're all there. Sometimes at the large national events, we have a huge display, and you, again, get to talk to folks from all over the system. So, yes. Somebody back here.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dawn Tucker, Lord and Tucker Management Consultants. And my question is, are your forecasts, or all the banks and the reserve and here at headquarters have a similar forecast with the contact person from contracts and the program office?
So one of the things that we do, so again, all 12 banks operate independently and do some things differently. But one of the things that we do twice a year, all the banks and the board, we come together and we attend 2 national conferences. We Bank Conference, which was in Las Vegas in June, and then we'll be attending the NMSDC National Conference in Detroit in October. And what we do, we all get together and we have a booth where all of us put our opportunities together from the board, all the 12 banks. We'll have a listing for you that you can take as a printout, and it'll have a listing of all of our all supplier diversity program contacts for you to reach out to and their contact information. So that's the extent of the forecast. We really put that out twice a year. And so,
Be helpful if you ask the question, that type of forecast that could be posted that everyone can see. Because going to the events in a limited amount of people to see it, and I understand, but as a point that might be helpful to post it so that everyone can see it.
Okay. At the board, we have a forecast and we have cards that you can pick up at our table. It has everything that we will be procuring the rest of 2017 and 2018. And if you go to our website, we have that information out there. But we can give you one of these before you leave today. Any other questions? Okay, let's talk a little bit about small businesses. So do the other reserve banks have goals for small businesses? When you have procurement opportunities, are small businesses competing with large businesses? How do you sort of level the playing field along those lines?
so currently, the Federal, and I can only speak for Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago in terms of how we do things. We bid everything over $10,000. We put it out to bid. Things under $10,000, we're not required to do a formal bid process. And so we typically, we don't have any kind of set-aside program or any special program for small businesses. But one of the things that I think many of you are familiar with is the Dodd-Frank Act, which required us to make sure that we focus on increasing procurement opportunities to minority and women-owned businesses. And so one of the metrics that we use in our office is that we require that for every bid that we have, that a minority or women-owned vendor is included on that bid so that they have an opportunity. So again, we don't have a set-aside, we don't have a goal, but we do have inclusion metrics to ensure that we have participation in our bids.
And it's the same for national IT as well. We do include diverse vendors, minority, women-owned vendors, exactly what Mark was saying, for where those capabilities or those requests fit. And it can be anywhere from up to 10 suppliers at one time. We're actually doing an RFP right now that we've got several minority and women-owned suppliers that have responded to an RFP. We don't have any goals for set-asides, but we do include small businesses as well. And I think the important part of this equation is for Richmond. Beverly and I use Cindy Turner, and you might be familiar with Cindy Turner. She's our supplier diversity manager. She's also in the matchmaking sessions today. It's really important to stay in touch with her. She has the fact sheet, she has the information, she has access into the systems to help find you and find the folks that qualify for our procurement activities.
Mm-hmm. So the NPO follows the same guidelines, and I would say the other thing that we do to try to level the playing field is that we preserve the option to do multiple awards. So if there are situations where a regional type layout of services and contract coverage makes the most sense, we are able to do that. And so I think that helps us promote the types of goals that we all share.
Okay. And at the board, we do have a set-aside program for contracts over $100,000. And in the spirit of the Dodd-Frank Act and with the SBA small business goals, we can set those contracts aside for women, minorities, and small businesses. The other thing that we do to sort of level the playing field, because we do have large businesses competing with small businesses, so we will add a 3% penalty to the cost for the large business, and that tends to help level the playing field. So, other questions? Yes. See this lady right here?
Hi, my name is Barbara Tulsky, and I had a question. You were talking about the value and the cost for a small business to come here, but that's minimal compared to the value and the cost to prepare an RFP and submit, which is astronomical to a small business to dedicate that time. But we're all in a catch-22 because if you haven't used us before to do something, you don't want to use us because we don't have a history with you. to give a $100,000 project to a company that you have no history with is a difficult task from your viewpoint. So how do I try to get the tier 2, how do I network with your primes or the people that you're comfortable with so you can get a relationship with me through that experience?
And can I'll just take that.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind. It's a level playing field. I just have to say this, when we do RFPs and we take it from the standpoint when we're evaluating all the suppliers, we're doing it at an equal level, and we're doing it from a standpoint that we might not have seen anybody's capabilities until the time that the RFP responses have been submitted and have been returned to us for evaluation purposes. So I want you to know, and I say this religiously because of what we practice from evaluating vendor responses as part of our RFP process and the level playing field that we like to maintain through that process. We did something in Richmond on August 2nd where we invited in some of our large suppliers to meet with some of you, diverse suppliers, and some of the folks that potentially could team up together to do a tier 2 plan. We have that as part of our RFPs, that we've asked suppliers to propose a tier 2 subcontracting plan with a diverse supplier, and that's one of our requirements that we do put into the RFP. It's interesting because we have some vendors that are religiously will respond that way, and some I can kind of tell just not too sure where to go. But we try to open it up in Richmond. I know we did bring in several of our top suppliers, our larger ones, I should say, and we helped with that networking opportunity, and it worked pretty good. It's a couple of years we've been doing that.
And I'd just like to add, in Chicago, that's one of the things that we do. As I mentioned earlier when we first started our conversation, is that the federal name is deceiving. We don't spend a lot of money, and so one of our vision and mission in Chicago is that we want to try and connect you to opportunities. And one of the things that we do, or we recently did, was that, as you can imagine, there are a lot of IT staffing firms out there, and we get calls all the time. And we use the MSP model, the Managed Service Provider model. And what we did was we had an event in Detroit where we connected 15 IT staffing firms with our MSP, gave them an overview of how to do business with the Federal Reserve, what our needs are, and how to do business with that MSP. And we had an opportunity for one-on-one meetings with that MSP, so you can start building a relationship. So those are the kinds of things that we try to do to help small businesses, minority women-owned businesses, to connect you with bigger firms or the primes, and some of the things we're doing with our general contractors as well, just to try and connect you to opportunities, because you may not have it with us in our contracts, but we think that we can connect you to other opportunities as well within our district. So again, I think the Supplier Diversity Program Manager is really an essential person you need to get to know across all the banks. They'll be able to make introductions for you and connect you to opportunities.
Say anything?
No, I agree with Melissa. It was exciting to see the larger suppliers that know us well, interact and network with the attendees just a couple months ago. And also for Mark, I can't overstate how important it is to meet with and talk with our supplier diversity managers. We rely on them so much to help us as we are generating those invitations to participate in events. She's an advocate. She is fair. She helps us challenge what are the right requirements to bring in and to cast a wide net and make sure that we are open to new kinds of relationships and getting to know new people. So I'm glad to hear you say that, Mark.
So one of the things that we use this vendor fair for is we want to make sure that all of you have a good understanding of how to do business with us very generally through this kind of conversation. So I'm going to do a public service announcement. Kim Briggs, who's standing over there with a turquoise jacket, is our procurement manager, and at 11:30 in this room, she will be doing a seminar called Creating a Winning Proposal, responding to the board's solicitation, offer, and award. You all call it the RFP. She will go section by section of an RFP. She will tell you what we look for, what we don't want to look for, what we won't read. She'll give you do's and don'ts. She'll give you tips. She'll help you understand our language and the kinds of things that we look for generally, both from your capabilities. She'll explain our technical evaluation process and what we look for there. And you're not going to find a better mentor in terms of how to respond to one of our RFPs. Her session will be videotaped, and we will make that available on our website. I'm sure that if any of you want copies of her slides, we will also make that available to you. It's a great reference. Kim, you want to say anything about that, now that I've done your public service announcement? Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, when it comes to bid, under 10, if you bid under $10,000, right, and what the procedure is, to me, you're not required, where if you bid over $10,000, what's the difference?
So I think you said if we don't bid under $10,000, right? So our business units, they have the opportunity to purchase goods and services under $10,000. A lot of times they'll do like RFQs. They may get some quotes from different vendors, but they're not required to do a formal bid where we have the RFP evaluation process, which tends to be longer. RFQ is you're just trying to get quotes, and it could be you're buying some kind of good, say it's, I don't know, say it's a pen. You want to buy a pen under $10,000, you might be able to just go get a few quotes and you get the best price. Whereas if an RFP tends to have more requirements around it, and so that's just the threshold that we have chosen to use. Again, the same point though, still go through your supplier diversity program manager, because we're always looking for opportunities to have diversity within any of our procurement opportunities, but that's the basic difference when we bid and when we don't.
I see two people over here.
Oh, my name is Mark Hands. I'm the supplier diversity program manager for the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago. Hands, H-A-N-D-S.
Okay. Other questions? Yes. over
And just to further clarify what Mark is talking about from a bidding perspective, all 12 Federal Reserve banks follow the same bidding guidelines. And I think I might have mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
Anything over 10,000 is bid. It can be formal or informal. Formal is an RFP. Informal is RFQs or quotes. Anything under 10,000. There's no bidding requirements for that. And it is across the 12 Federal Reserve banks as well as the MPO office.
Yeah. Same thing with the Federal Reserve Board. In addition to that, we have, we're part of the federal government's purchase card program, where people can spend up to $5,000 for goods. For services, it's a limit of $2,500 per service. And we spend about $5 million a year through our purchase card program. One of the things that I'd like to do a better job of is tracking who are we spending that money with. We don't now know that, but we are trying to capture that information so that we can include that in our annual report that we have to prepare along with the banks to Congress. Question for the panel.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
So you mentioned the use of MSPs to engage your suppliers for contingent labor. How many of the 12 banks have opted in to use that MSP?
I know it's not all 12. I think it's 9.
It's 9.
It's a 9.
Yep, roughly 9.
Yes.
As well as my shop, which you can count that as an extra one, but the National IT Office uses them as well out of Richmond.
Yes?
I got a follow-up question. that all, across all contingent labor
It's,
lines?
it's across all contingent labor, yep. That's true.
Other questions? So question for the panel. Are all of your bids and selections based upon low cost?
No.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, particularly in the MPO, so again, remember, we're working with multiple banks at once. So we bring together representatives from all of the banks that might be participating. Melissa said, there were 9 for the MSP. It's sort of, and it's back to that timing thing. Who needs what when? So generally, we're going to have a group that represents the interested banks, and we're going to work with them to develop the criteria for what they're looking for. Of course, cost is going to be one of those criteria, but generally, it's not going to be the only one, and it's not going to be the most important one in most cases as well. They're usually looking for other value-add type things, lead time or commitments on service levels, things that help balance out cost because that may be important to the group that's seeking those goods or services.
With our, I will tell you, it's a very complicated review process.
Yes.
We don't make it easy. We spend a lot of time of putting our requirements together for, especially an IT, RFP, and then we put a lot into evaluating those, the proposals and coming up with a weighting criteria. A lot is taken into account. And we also meet with suppliers and meet and formally introduce that overall solution that will be proposed as part of an RFP. A lot goes into it. Cost, like Beverly said, is one component. And cost, of course, we ask you to put in your best offer. But we're also going to take it to another level that we're going to compare the overall proposal to cost and try to come up with the best overall solution.
So you said you do that as you are developing and working with your clients in terms of the statement of work and putting it all together. Do you typically start out with a 50-50 split between cost and technical? And under what circumstances do you change those variables?
I can't think of a time when we've done a 50-50 split, honestly. So
Okay.
Again, we work very closely with the business areas to say what's important to you, what's going to add the most value to your business, and then that's how the scoring framework is developed. So no, I would not say 50-50 is our
Okay.
approach.
And I would just add that it's everything is important, and you have to look at it as every aspect of that RFP, it's evaluated at 100%. You have to look at it that way, and you have to look at the value of the complete overall response.
And at the board, I would say that most of our RFQs and solicitation offer and awards start out being 50-50. We do work with our clients to determine whether or not, based upon what they're purchasing, whether or not we need to put more weight on the technical piece. We understand that that's important. We try to be as flexible as possible. We also will look at best value contracts where if a vendor can bring the project in a little ahead of time, may cost a little more money, but they have certain expertise that we really feel would be advantageous and beneficial to us, we will sometimes do that. I had another question, I lost it. Questions from the floor? Yes, here's one.
Yes, Niche Consulting. My question is, how similar is your process in terms of evaluation of offers as well as basis of award? If you are familiar with FAR, right, there are certain requirements that you need to put in place as part of your solicitation where you have to tell the vendors ahead of time, how are you going to evaluate the responses, right? Different ways. Is it a lowest price technically acceptable? Is it the best value offer? What is there a trade-off? And do you have those kind of things published as part of the solicitation ahead of time?
Yes.
Yes.
So we certainly include the list of evaluation criteria within the RFP, and then I also encourage all of the groups to they provide a little narrative that helps. So I would encourage, read carefully and think about what they're trying to convey to you. In addition to the evaluation criteria list, that narrative is going to give you some business context to help you prepare your response.
The evaluation criteria, sorry, Mark. Sorry, because this is like right where we,
Yeah,
I mean,
this is,
right
we get excited about it.
we live and breathe it. Evaluation criteria is provided as part of all RFPs. We are in the spirit of the FAR. Of course, we don't follow it to the T, but we follow it in that kind of concept. We provide statements in there, and this is where I'll go back and say that we say it's of equal importance for you to look at all aspects of that RFP and provide the best response that you can, because we're going to look at that and review that compared to other vendor proposals, and we want you to provide equal attention to that as much as you can. And we spell it out there. We don't disclose our weighting criteria, as maybe Christine has said and talked about from the board perspective. But we come up with a weighting criteria prior to the responses coming back in from a vendor. And we've got that already established and set in place, and we follow that all the way through the process to evaluate proposals and come up with the ranking.
And at the board, we follow that same process. The other thing that we will often do is to have a pre-bid conference. And we will bring prospective vendors into the board. We'll have the program managers to talk about the process, what we're going to be looking for, the scope of the work. And if it's a construction project, we will walk them through what the construction is going to be. We allow them to sometimes take pictures and ask questions about what the scope of the project is, and what we're going to be looking for in terms of the capabilities of the vendors that are going to be bidding on it. The other thing that we do as part of that is we will often include who we know will likely be prime contractors, but we'll also invite potential subcontractors to get to know the primes, maybe opportunities for partnering. We certainly encourage that. We don't prescribe that, but we do try to provide opportunities for primes and subs to get to know one another. Question for the panel? Oh, okay.
Hey, good morning. I'm Brigadier General retired Dick Miller. I represent the National Veteran Business Development Council. Mark was kind enough to attend our event in Detroit a few weeks ago. But the question I have for the panel, how do you include veteran spend in your diversity plans? And if so, how do you certify that these folks are truly veterans? Thank you.
We'll let you all start.
Let me start with that.
That's you, Mark.
Good to see you. Yeah, we hosted the National Veteran Business Development Council's second annual conference at our Detroit branch. So, it's been a successful event, and we're looking to move it to Chicago in 2018. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is the way the Dodd-Frank Act was crafted is that it focused on minority and women-owned businesses. One of the things that many of the Federal Reserve banks are doing is that we're expanding our definition of diversity to include veterans, LGBT, but we don't have, it's not part of the Dodd-Frank language, but it's something that we're doing within our own banks. And one of the things that we do, we are members of the National Veteran Business Development Council, and we recognize their certification. And typically, that's how we still, in our report to Congress, we're going to put a note of our reportable spend with minority and women-owned businesses. But as we're doing more business with veteran-owned businesses, LGBT businesses, Hub Zone, you name it, we will probably put that as a footnote within our congressional report, letting Congress know that we're expanding our definition of diverse to include our veterans, but it hasn't been formally adopted in terms of the language.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Fowler from TransUnion. I know the Federal Reserve banks, or some of them, support treasury programs, so specifically the contracting shop in Richmond, as well as Dallas for some of the infrastructure, and St. Louis potentially for a project support. So in those procurements, do those more closely follow a traditional government procurement where, you know, GSA, FAR, FBO would be included, or would it go through the Federal Reserve process of being, you know, the process that you mentioned earlier?
That's a good question. And if it is a Federal Reserve procurement that is either in the National IT Organization headquartered in Richmond, or if it is at a Reserve Bank level, and they might do more development work for Treasury purposes, they're going to follow the Federal Reserve guidelines. And the Treasury is coming to Reserve Bank. We have a Treasury support office that's out of St. Louis that will bring the business or bring the work to us from the Treasury. But we'll follow our own guidelines, do our own contracting on behalf of the Treasury. Good question.
Let me speak to the question on certification. The board does not require certification for any vendor. We allow you all to self-certify. We do, however, have a vetting program that we reserve the right to pull your financials. We may ask you for your annual report, your financial statement. Marletha and our other procurement staff may invite you in, talk to you in depth about what are your capabilities, what's been your past practice with similar kinds of projects. Under the Dodd-Frank Act, our OMWI office also has the right to go do a visit of your location. We want to know that you have something more than maybe just a mailbox, that if you say you have X number of employees, we want to know, how do you treat those employees? Do you pay them on time? Or are they going to be coming to us saying, we're not getting paid? We don't want to get into that, but we want to make sure that when we are including you on our bidding list, that you are well qualified for the kind of work that we have available. So we will allow you to self-certify. We do track minorities, women, we track our small business spend. We're just beginning to track veterans and service-disabled veterans, and we'll probably be expanding those definitions. One of the things that is a bit of a limitation to us is having good automated systems. And we're in the process now of thinking through buying a new financial system for the board, one that will have a fairly robust automated system for procurement. So any of you that do systems work and provide procure-to-pay type systems, we'd love to talk to you. Okay, any other questions from the audience? We have a lot more time. You're not going to have this opportunity.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, when you talk about self-certification, right? What kind of self-certification do you require? You say you require financial, and what else do you require?
So when I talk about certification, some companies require that you be certified as a small business through the Small Business Administration. We do not require that. Some say, well, you have to be certified by WeBank if you're a women-owned company. We don't care. As long as you can do the work that we have, we want you to come and be a part of our program. If you say that you are a small minority women-owned business, we'll track it as such. We don't go behind to verify who the owner of the company is. We will take your word for it. So
I can tell you, we don't take your word for it.
Those untrusting banks.
One of the things we use, in many cases, we start off with Dun & Bradstreet, where they do have some classifications. But one of the things that we know with Dun & Bradstreet, they have some self-classifications and certifications. So we typically are looking for WeBank certifications and their affiliates, NMSDC certifications and their affiliates, state, local certifications. We want to know that they've gone through some sort of process that verifies that the business is owned, controlled, and managed by a minority or a woman or a diverse vendor. One of the things that, now, to Chris's point is, you do not have to be certified to do business with us. This is just a tool for us to count you as our reportable diverse spend.
Yeah. The other thing that we do, because we are quasi-government, we have access to the federal government, the SAMs and the PEPers, so we will always check that to see if any of our prospective vendors are on the debarred list. And I don't know if you all, I don't think you all have access to that, do you? Yeah, so we will check that as well. Question here, Greg?
I probably don't need this. My name is Cindy Hayes, and I have just started a consulting business. So right now I'm one person, but I will work with others who have 1 or 2 people consulting businesses. We'll team together. So there's a couple of things that I've run into in trying to put together a proposal for different organizations or federal or state agencies. One is that I don't have a record in Dun & Bradstreet yet, because I am new. The past couple of years, invoices are not such that someone could go and find my records online for my company. I'm going to be really frank with you, what some of us run up to. So I've called Dun & Bradstreet, and they've offered to do a background check on my company and make a notation in their file. That will cost me some money, like a formal certification. Is that worthwhile for somebody like me with regard to where you will look when you consider a very small company, woman-owned, that is new? I've been working for a long time, despite my youthful appearance, you can tell. So I have a lot of experience, but not under my company's invoices and my company's financials. So this is hard to break into the first time.
So I think at the board, get in touch with Marletha. She will shepherd you around, she'll get to know you, she'll, whatever amount of business that you've done in the past, we'll ask those people how you did, would hire you back. So that's the value of having a supplier diversity program manager at the banks and at the board. They can sort of help you navigate that. We want new vendors. We want new vendors.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
And I'll just echo, what Chris just said. If it is a niche per se that you have to offer, or something that's really unique, we make exceptions, and we'll do that from a standpoint that we really need to have the service, or need to bring this vendor in for some business reason. We have an exception process that we do go through. And if it's, even if it has to do with insurance purposes, we do require a lot of insurance from a policy perspective that we expect vendors to cover. But that's maybe for a large project. If it's small and it's consulting, and it's coaching, or maybe training, we do have exceptions.
Yeah. No, insurance is not a problem, I think, for most of us, because we understand that. But the idea that I could pay someone to do some sort of a basic Dun & Bradstreet on me without financial data, they would come and do that. That's what I'm kind of looking for. And that'll cost $1,500 to $2,000, which is a big cost. A comment back, one $100,000 contract from you would pay for sometimes 2 employees that I would hire for you. So to us, that's big. Some of us. So we're not worried about that. One more small question. Do you ever publish who your main suppliers are, who your large suppliers are? I understand your reservation about different things like that, but if I wanted to find out who was working on a construction project, do I have to go case the place and figure it out by what they put up?
So once our contracts are let, those contracts are public documents. So you don't have to go through a FOIA request to get that. I don't think so, Kim. Do they have to go through a FOIA request to get access to contracts that are already let?
If they want the actual contract, they need to go through FOIA. If you're just looking for the name of the contract holder.
Yeah, so we can give you that. Okay. Yes. See questions over here?
As part of the evaluation, do you require past performances, and do you verify them with the appropriate people? Or, for example, in your case, do you consider their individual experience as something that would meet the requirement, if there is such a requirement?
We use that as part of our evaluation criteria, and we do check up on references from a customer perspective. And we call them and we'll meet with them, and that will help us make our decisions, yes.
And the RFP also gives us the option to conduct, not just demos, but interviews where you would come in and meet with the evaluation team, and they can ask you about some of your experiences and hear some of your stories as part of the RFP evaluation. Overall, it's beyond that initial written submission. Yes.
Yes.
I'm Rosemary Falcon with Falcon Capital Advisors. We're local, our office is local, and I lost my train of thought. Management consulting business, and we specialize in consulting for financial services. My question is GSA schedules. I haven't heard y'all mention those. Do you use them?
We do.
Because we're on
The
it.
board uses them.
Okay.
I don't think the
The banks do
cannot
not.
use them.
Banks do not?
Yeah,
Okay.
but we do use GSA schedules a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yes. Other questions? In the back, Greg?
Good morning. My name is Derek Burnett with CAI Inc. We're located in Columbia, Maryland. I heard Dr. Yetz say this morning that naturally they're looking for the greatest services for the lowest price. But does the Federal Reserve Bank ever select best value over lowest price?
Yeah, that's pretty much, I think Beverly and personnel, we've said that. That will go into making our decision. Price is a factor, but we do consider, and I know Chris mentioned it, is it's time to market. If we really have to look at bringing something in quicker and a vendor can do that, it might cost us more to do it. We will potentially, depending on the importance and the need, we will take that into account.
Other questions? Yes. Greg? There's someone right here.
Hi, I'm Desiree Patno. I'm the CEO and president of the National Association of Women in Real Estate Businesses. We're a women's trade association for women in the housing ecosystem. I fly out from Irvine, California every year to attend the event, and several of you know me. I just want to give a compliment versus a statement, a question. I think it's incredible what you do here, because the fact is your numbers that you talk about, small businesses, your outreach, how you come and you evaluate not just best price, but also that you actually do conduct interviews. And the fact that you're putting this together and really trying to, most importantly for us, is raise the number of small businesses that you're using, and also include extra classifications like the veterans over here, because of all the talk of Dodd-Frank, of all the things of what they're going to do, get rid of it, keep it, all that. You have a really good focal point to continue it regardless of what happens. And to us, in the women's and the gender equality, thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. Other questions? So panelist.
Oh, there was one
Oh,
question.
sorry. Okay.
Hi, my name is Joel Antwine. I own a construction management company out of Philadelphia. My question is, when we try to infiltrate the system here and get bids and get actually RFPs, is it necessary for me to do so at the board level and the local level? I'm looking at some of the information here and was going to go over and talk to the Federal Reserve Bank out of Philadelphia, but they don't list construction services as a need or under their particular title right now. So I'm just wondering whether or not I need to go at the board level only, or for those services, or go into the districts.
So you should look at all of that. The board is separate, so the reserve banks don't always know what we have coming up at any given time. So definitely go on the board's website. Do you all publish?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, if you come to the Fed Reserve Chicago table, we'll have a list of some of the opportunities that we have coming up. And I believe all the other districts will do something similar. But again, reach out to each bank individually and to see what's coming up within their district. And I know Philadelphia is participating here, so please stop by.
And even though we publish what we know are going to be contracts coming up, from time to time, we have things that just come up. And we will try to quickly get that out on our website, start looking for vendors that could meet that need. So, and again, listed in the brochure and on the app, it has all of the folks who are here today from all of the reserve banks, the board, the other federal agencies. It has contact information. We put it out there so you will know who to contact. Yeah. Thank you. So talk about some things that you're particularly proud of and what you're doing at the banks.
Sure. So well, I hate to steal Melissa's story, but I think it's one
She'll
of
jump in, you know that.
I know. I really thought the sessions between the large suppliers that are already doing business with us and the attendees to our last conference, you know, I listened in, I eavesdropped on a couple conversations, and it was just very insightful, some of the advice they were willing to share, and it made me feel proud to be there and part of the Fed. And then the other thing that I'm proud of is that I don't think culturally we treat it as an extra expectation. It's not, oh, well, this is a little sort of bonus thing that we do on the side. I think it is embedded in our process. I think it gets attention each and every project, and I'm very proud of the relationships that we've developed with our supplier diversity community, and they work so hard to help us, and I'm very proud of that.
Wow. So I would say one of the things that we've done in Chicago that I'm really proud of is I created our signature supplier diversity initiative about 4 years ago. I call it Business Smart Week. Many of you may have heard of Money Smart Week. Money Smart Week was created within the Fed, I don't know, about 20 years ago, where it provides financial literacy workshops for individuals. So I stole that idea and said, why don't I do something for businesses? And so what we do is we create workshops in Chicago and Detroit in 1 week in July, where we bring different workshops that give you information on how to better manage your business. Because so many of you business owners you're knee deep in your business. You don't have time to go and like take a class or things. So we try to bring important workshops to you during that week. Some of the things that we do, we talk about cybersecurity, we talked about access to capital, we talk about just connecting businesses, so different types of activities that we had. So we're 4 years strong, and our first year we had about 140 participants. And then just this past year, we had about 450 participants.
Excellent.
So it's growing, and we're really proud of the progress we're making.
Okay.
I'll just tell you about a recent, probably within the past year, of an RFP that my team crafted. And it's something different from a standpoint of selecting a supplier to put a 4-year contract in place, and that potentially can get renewed. We found ourselves, especially from an IT consulting perspective, we needed many different types of capabilities or consulting services. It wasn't so cut and dry that you could hire the same vendor every time and do the work over and over again. We needed more emerging type of things. So we did this RFP, we called it a boutique RFP, where we had little niche suppliers, and there's quite a few diverse suppliers, small, minority, women-owned, that we actually sent this RFP out to. And I told my team, I said, we've got to do this in some way that it will provide us contracts going forward that our businesses can use over and over again, because we get caught up in this cycle of doing RFPs or quotes or whatever it might be, just because of what our guidelines say. The resulting contracts ended up 11 out of a base of 22 to 24 that we initially sent out to get proposals from. We have varying capabilities and categories. We defined what those categories are, if it was even project management, engineering services, I can't remember every bucket that we awarded to, but we have 11 contracts. Those 11 contracts has provided so much value from a business perspective that our customers will come to us and ask us where they can find some boutique niche services in regards to what we put in place. I have to just tell you that was a win-win kind of a thing. It was a little bit different way for us to do business, and it proved well. So.
Okay. At the board, I think I'm proud of a lot of things. My staff, I have an incredible staff. They're all here today, and I hope you'll take the opportunity to talk with them, meet with them, attend the sessions. And I'm very proud that this event continues to grow every time we offer it. I know when I first moved into the procurement function, they were hosting it at the Board of Governors downtown, and we would maybe get, I don't know, 100, 200 people come, and then suddenly we ran out of room. The last time we had it at the board, the fire marshal said, you got too many people, you gotta, some of them have to leave. And during that one, we literally had people outside of the board building around the corner trying to register. And at that point, we said, okay, we can't do this on site anymore. So we started coming to a hotel. So from the 300 or 400 people that we would have if we were doing it at the board, for this event, we have 1,100 people registered. So we continue to grow. We thank you all for your, thank you. For your participation and your patience with us, even though you come to lots of events at the board and the system and you don't get contracts, please keep coming back. Don't give up. The other thing that I'm proud of is that we are continuing to try to get new businesses into the board. During 2016, we had 150 new businesses that were doing business with the board that had never done business with the board before. And many of those were small businesses. So thank you all. Any other questions? Yes.
Your contracts you have. I'm Karen Myers from Programmer Resources in St. Louis. You said you have contracts and you award them for 3 years, and then you have the opportunity to extend them for 1-year extensions for 3 years. During that time, do you optimize that and for people that's not participating and add vendors, or do you wait until the new bid comes out?
So at the board, our contract is 1 year and 3 option years, right? 4 option years. 4 option years. Once that contract or that basic ordering agreement where we might have several vendors that provide a variety of services, once those are let, we do not add vendors to it until that contract has expired. Or our client might say, well, I don't want to exercise that option year, and then we'll go out for bid again. Thanks.
So we can renew for 2 like terms if we choose, but I would say the renewal process is the time when we go back and say, is this working for us? What has changed in the market? What has changed from the business need perspective? And that's when we usually make that decision to bid or not bid, even if we still have renewal options available to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to be the same here with our banks.
We have about 15 more minutes for questions, but I'm going to ask the panel if there's a word of advice you can give to the folks that are here, what would that be?
Well, I know we've talked a lot about RFPs, and I think Beverly and I kind of live that world quite a bit. And RFPs, I did hear from the audience that they are cumbersome, they take a lot of time. And I mean, I think we all can agree that they are very hard to get through sometimes. I gave you any words of advice if I said anything with regards from a takeaway perspective. We put a lot of time in actually compiling that RFP and putting that together. And of course, in my world, it's a lot of technical people, and they love to put technical things in the RFP from a requirements perspective. The time that we spend on it previously before it's issued is of value to us from a standpoint we're expecting a good response back, and we want to see that you have taken the time to prepare that response and we will evaluate it according to our criteria. But we want, I guess the message is, that I really want to say is the value, the time that you spend in putting that RFP together is a value that we take wholeheartedly as we review that RFP response. I don't know if I say it correctly, but it is important, and I hope that you can understand and appreciate that. And I know it's hard for a one-person shop to really get through that, but it is something that I think that our message is important. And
I would say two things I'd want to leave you with is that, through conversations like this, is that understand who we are. The Federal Reserve, know that we're not all federal agencies, and know, a little bit about what we do. You can go to our website to get some information, again, attending these types of information. And secondly, I would just say reach out to Supplier Diversity Program Managers. I can't stress that enough. They're really your advocate to not only can we give you information about the Fed, any questions that you have, but we're your advocate. And so, and we want you to get business with us. So reach out to the Supplier Diversity Program Managers and be persistent with them.
And for me, I think that along the lines of what Melissa wanted to convey about the RFP process, we do put a lot of thought into how we want the RFP to allow you to be successful. And, the folks that tend to really focus on conveying their value in the proposal are the ones that really resonate. I mean, think about the evaluation team or the evaluation members that are going to read your proposal. Your enthusiasm comes through, and we get excited for you as well. So I would encourage you to keep putting yourself in these responses, even though we know it's a huge burden, but the teams are very good about evaluating them thoroughly and appreciating your efforts.
And I echo everything that the panel has said. I would also say to you, be patient, stay in touch with us. I typically don't give my cards out. I will give my card out to anybody that wants it. You have the names of all of the procurement staff at the board. They don't mind if you call them or send them emails. Stay in touch with them. Familiarity will help you in the long run. Any other questions before we close? Yes?
Good morning. Arvind Deshpande, Booz Allen. So the question you brought up, or the answer you gave earlier about renewing MSAs, we have an MSA or two with NPO that are coming up. How does that process work? Do you automatically reach out to MSA holders, or should we be in contact with you?
We would love to hear from you.
Will do. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. I hope everyone has downloaded the app. As part of that app, there is an evaluation section for each one of the seminars and just general information about what you think about this event. We want your feedback. We want to do better. And I hope to see you at some of the other sessions and just walking around. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.